Lou Costello's daughters speak out on his private life. Louis Francis Christio, better known by his stage name Lou Costello, was born on March 6, 1906, in Paterson, New Jersey. He would go on to become one of the most beloved comedians of all time, particularly as part of the iconic comedy duo Abbott and Costello, alongside Bud Abbott. Costello's early life hinted at the versatility that would later mark his career. He was an athletic young man, excelling in sports like basketball and boxing, which added to his physical humor and acrobatics in his later comedic routines. He was also a fan of silent film star Charlie Chaplin, whose influence is evident in Costello's blend of slapstick and heartwarming vulnerability. Costello moved to Hollywood in the late 1920s, with aspirations to become an actor. He started off as a stuntman and extra in films but struggled to break into major roles. In 1935, his career took a dramatic turn when he met Bud Abbott, a seasoned straight man in comedy. The two paired up and soon became one of the most successful comedy teams in show business history. Their distinct dynamic, Abbott as the fast-talking, authoritative straight man and Costello as the bumbling, childlike figure, quickly won them a devoted audience. Costello's character was often the lovable underdog, full of innocence, confusion, and a penchant for misunderstanding, which made his humor widely relatable and universally appealing. Their breakthrough came in the 1930s with their radio performances on shows like The Kate Smith Hour, where they began performing their now legendary routines, including the famed Who's on First sketch. This baseball-themed skit became their signature bit, a rapid-fire exchange of wordplay that showcased Costello's confusion against Abbott's exasperated delivery. Who's on First remains one of the most famous comedy routines of all time and is still referenced in pop culture today. Costello's impeccable timing, combined with his ability to convey a wide range of emotions through his facial expressions and physical comedy, helped elevate the routine to iconic status. As their popularity grew, Abbott and Costello transitioned to films, where they enjoyed enormous success during the 1940s and early 1950s. Their first major film, Buck Privates, 1941, was a huge hit and cemented their place in Hollywood. Over the years, they starred in a string of successful films, including Hold That Ghost, 1941, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, 1948, and The Time of Their Lives, 1946. In many of these films, Costello's ability to perform slapstick stunts, deliver rapid-fire dialogue, and engage in hilarious misunderstandings drove much of the comedy, with Abbott providing the perfect foil. Their comedic chemistry, honed through years of vaudeville and radio performances, was unparalleled. Behind the scenes, Lou Costello's life was not without its struggles. In 1943, tragedy struck when his infant son, Lou Costello Jr., tragically drowned in the family swimming pool just days before his first birthday. This devastating loss deeply affected Costello, though he famously went on to perform that same night, delivering one of his best performances. His personal strength and resilience during this difficult time only endeared him further to his fans, who admired his ability to persevere despite his grief. Costello's humor often had a childlike innocence, and this tragic event seemed to deepen the emotional range of his performances, bringing a greater sense of pathos to his comedy. Lou Costello's career was not without challenges, especially in the later years. By the mid-1950s, the popularity of Abbott and Costello began to wane as television became the dominant form of entertainment, and newer comedic acts emerged. Costello also faced health problems, including rheumatic fever, which limited his physical abilities. Despite these setbacks, he continued to perform, and the duo even had their own television show, The Abbott and Costello Show, which ran from 1952 to 1954. Though the show was short-lived, it became a cult classic and is still enjoyed by comedy fans to this day. After splitting with Abbott in 1957, Costello attempted a solo career. His solo film The 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock, 1959, was released posthumously, as Costello tragically died of a heart attack on March 3, 1959, just 3 days before his 53rd birthday. His death marked the end of an era in comedy, but his legacy lived on. Lou Costello is remembered as one of the most talented comedians of the 20th century, and his work has influenced generations of comedians who followed. Lou Costello, the beloved comedian and one half of the iconic comedy duo Abbott and Costello, may be best remembered for his infectious laugh, slapstick humor, and memorable routines like, "Who's on first?" However, behind the laughter and the spotlight, there was a deeply personal and private side of the funny man that his daughters, Carol, Christine, and Patty, have openly shared with fans over the years. Through their stories, they have painted a portrait of a man who, despite the constant demands of show business, remained devoted to his family and deeply affected by personal tragedies that shaped his outlook on life. While the world knew Lou Costello as a comedic genius who could light up a room with his humor, his daughters experienced a different side of him, one that was tender, loving, and protective. Lou, who had grown up in a large family himself, cherished the role of being a father. His daughters have often spoken about how, despite his busy schedule, he always made time for them. Whether it was playing with them, telling them bedtime stories, or simply being present, Lou prioritized his children in a way that was rare for someone in his profession. His family would frequently accompany him on tours, and he was known for creating special moments with his girls, often setting aside time for just the four of them. Carol, his eldest daughter, once recounted how her father would come home from long days of filming and immediately switch gears into being daddy for his children. Despite the exhaustion that came with filming grueling comedic routines, Lou would always greet his daughters with enthusiasm and joy, making sure they knew that they were his top priority. His daughters have fondly remembered how he would turn everyday moments into something magical, using his comedic flair to entertain and delight them, even in private family settings. Lou Costello's life was not without its hardships, and perhaps one of the most devastating moments came in 1943 with the tragic death of his infant son, Lou Jr., who drowned in the family pool just days before his first birthday. This heart-wrenching loss deeply affected Lou and his family, marking a turning point in his personal life. While he continued to perform and make audiences laugh, those close to him could see the pain he carried. His daughters have since opened up about how their father struggled with the grief of losing a child, describing how the loss remained with him for the rest of his life. Christine, his second daughter, shared in interviews how her father tried to cope with the tragedy by immersing himself in work, using comedy as a form of therapy to mask the deep sorrow he felt. But behind the scenes, Lou was often overcome with sadness, and his daughters saw how difficult it was for him to reconcile the laughter he brought to others with the personal anguish he felt. His humor, which was once purely joyous, took on a new dimension, and those who knew him best could sense the undercurrent of vulnerability in his performances. Lou's daughters also recalled how their mother, Anne, was a source of strength during this difficult time, helping to hold the family together while Lou grappled with his emotions. Although Lou's grief was immense, he made a conscious effort to be there for his daughters, knowing that they too were affected by the loss of their brother. The tragedy brought the family closer in many ways, with Lou becoming even more protective and nurturing toward his daughters. Despite the personal challenges he faced, Lou Costello remained committed to giving back to his community and instilling strong values in his children. His daughters have frequently spoken about how their father's generosity knew no bounds, particularly when it came to children. Lou was actively involved in charitable work, especially with children's hospitals, where he would frequently visit and entertain young patients. His daughters often accompanied him on these visits, witnessing firsthand the joy he brought to those in need, even while carrying his own pain. Christine has spoken of how these charitable acts were a reflection of Lou's upbringing and the values he wanted to pass down to his children. Lou never forgot his humble beginnings in Paterson, New Jersey, and despite his fame and success, he remained grounded in his belief that it was important to give back to those less fortunate. His daughters learned from him the importance of compassion and kindness, and they have carried those lessons into their own lives. Lou's daughters have also shared that, despite his fame, their father never let it go to his head. He remained down to earth, and his family life was where he found true happiness. His daughters were taught to appreciate the simple things in life, and Lou was careful to shield them from the pressures of Hollywood. Though he worked with some of the biggest stars of the time, he ensured that his home was a sanctuary, a place where his daughters could grow up away from the spotlight and enjoy a normal childhood. In the years since Lou's death in 1959, His daughters have worked to preserve his legacy, not just as a comedian but as a loving father who was devoted to his family. Carol, Christine, and Patty have all spoken publicly about how proud they are of their father's accomplishments, but they are even prouder of the man he was in private. To them, Lou Costello was not just a larger-than-life entertainer, but a man who deeply loved his family and worked hard to ensure their happiness, even in the face of immense personal struggles. Through interviews and appearances, Lou's daughters have ensured that his legacy endures, sharing their memories of their father with fans who may only know him through his comedic work. They have been candid about his challenges, his triumphs, and the profound impact he had on their lives. To them, their father's greatest achievement wasn't his success in Hollywood, but the love and devotion he showed his family. Lou Costello's daughters continue to keep his memory alive, honoring the man behind the laughter by sharing the personal stories that defined who he truly was. Through their words, fans have come to understand that Lou Costello was more than just a comedian. He was a father, a husband, and a man who faced life's hardships with courage and resilience. His legacy lives on not only in his timeless comedy but also in the hearts of his daughters, who will forever cherish the father they knew and loved.